We are live. I'm going to set a timer on this thing. Okay. Liam Dollard in the house.
Alright, John.
What's the crack, man? Do you know what, before we start,
Beautiful, eh?
what an office.
Yeah.
What an office. What a studio.
Malahide.
What a hello
Cormac.
So, Friedrich Nietzsche, did you ever hear of him? He was a musician and he was the father of modern philosophy, and he said, without music life would be a mistake. Bang on that, isn't it?
Yeah. You need your music.
You need the music. So Liam was instrumental and a huge part in the early 1990s of the dance rave scene that hit Dublin, and I was handed a mixtape when I was in 5th year, and it just said Power Liam Dollard. That's all it said on it. And I was listening to the Happy Mondays and all at the time, and Stone Roses and bands like Ride and Flowered Up, and somebody handed me this and I was like, sound. And I heard a few tunes on it and I was just like, and if you listen to a track on the Happy Mondays, you kind of had to wait then for another track to come in and wait and another track, but this all just linked together. I was like, what is this stuff? 5 weeks after I was handed that tape, I was standing inside.
Really?
That quick.
And was it a Power FM recording? Had someone taped it off the radio?
Someone had taped it off the radio and he had wrote on it in pen, you know what I mean?
And could you hear my voice?
Yes.
Right, because it was quite difficult back in the days when you were DJing in a radio station like Power FM to actually communicate with the audience that was listening.
Yeah.
And to the people who were taping, because there was a lot of that going on at the time.
Yeah.
So I found that if you didn't get in with your little talk straight away, that you would clam up and you wouldn't say anything for an hour and a half, and it became a lonely old show, you know what I mean? Just playing records and mixing them. Yeah. And I found quite enjoyable when you actually did get in and say something, even if it was like just to say this is the name of the record and it's produced by, and that gave you a little, it gave you a bit of confidence to then talk, because it was, you would nearly stop doing it if you're just going to go into a little sort of basement or wherever the party station was and just mix for an hour and a half. You could do that in your own house. Yeah. And so it was really important for me to communicate with whoever was listening, even if it was only a few people. Yeah. So, but that's what I was asking you. Could you hear my voice? Yeah,
no, you could. And there wasn't much talking on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There wasn't much. There wasn't much talking on it. But remember, like, just listening to this, and like I'd love to be able to say, oh yeah, this track was on it, that track, as I was telling you earlier on. Yeah. But I remember just going, what is this? You know what I mean?
There was a guy called Aidan Kelly who he used to play on the Sundays, and he was all chap and he had everyone in stitches.
Aidan Kelly, yeah,
Aidan Kelly, and he was absolutely amazing. Now he could have went on and made a professional career out of the whole thing, but it wasn't that fluent with me. I had to, as I said, some weekends were better. But it was a great station. Brian Chamberlain and Brian Keogh were the two guys behind that. Initially, I started off out in Neilstown. Yeah. Moved into town, went digital. I done it for about 6 or 7 years. Every Friday, it was class.
Yeah. And looking back at that scene, so you grew up in North Dublin, and I was on another podcast and somebody asked me, like, what brought you to the rave scene? And I was younger, and everywhere you tried to go, sorry lads, not tonight, you're not wearing this, and you're not wearing that, and you're not wearing the other. And it used to be like one night you get into a place and you go like the next weekend, regulars only, and you just be like, what? Whereas the reason why because it didn't matter what you were wearing, it didn't matter where you were from, it didn't matter about any of that stuff. Just you paid your money and you walked in the door.
Yeah.
And you were just like I wasn't a size regular, but I went a good few times. But
yeah. If you turned up, you got in at those places, you know, and you could wear what you want. Where are you from?
Raheny,
Oh, okay.
Dublin 5.
Yeah, not far from where I'm from, Santry.
Yeah.
Lorcan, so it's sort of...
Yeah.
We cycled to Raheny to play a bit of par 3 golf back in the day, and played soccer in St. Anne's for many years.
Yeah, the park, the Anne's.
Mm.
But that's what drew me into it, because there was none of that, and it was just like mental. You know what I mean? It was at the very start. It was like, for the start for me, that wasn't the start. It was just very raw, like, you know what I mean? It was different. It was a different sound, and it was like nothing I was used to. Like people with their tops off, going bananas, smell of poppers everywhere. Just it was just fun. You know, I thought it was fun anyway. You know, it was fun. The music was good, but I suppose we go back before I start asking you a few questions about that. You grew up in Lorcan, and you were into music, obviously, growing up.
Yeah, I remember back in when I was a kid, trying to record the top 10 coming out from whatever, I think it was BBC Radio 1, the top 10, and I had you're ready with your red button and your play button, and you're ready to try and then pause it and then go again. And I was always into music. Like my little one is now. Sadie is 5, and she's into music. It must be in you. So most people are into music, but I remember trying to have all my cassettes, I think basically rollers might have been even the thing when I was a kid, you know what I mean? But it was always sort of melodic music, but I loved all sorts of music, you know.
Yeah.
Went on to, what did I like then? I liked a lot of reggae and the Specials, and my first concert was in the Stardust, just about a month, was it even a month? It could have been even a couple of weeks before that dreadful fire. Yeah. The Specials and the Beat played.
Yes. And
me and John, a neighbour of mine, we got in. We were underage. John's auntie, I think her name was Angela, she brought us, and that was my sort of first ever live concert. Yeah. And it was amazing. Like you'll always remember your first concert, even though I believe that it was quite a sort of raucous affair. Like there was a lot of skinheads from all over different parts of the city that caused a bit of hassle, and I think Terry Hall was locked in the dressing room afterwards. Like they were knocking on the door trying to see him and all that. But the Beat were for me stole the show that night, and started my sort of love affair with ska and reggae in those days.
And like that was, I grew up in the 80s. You would be 10 years older than me, and so you would have more experience. But like for me, in even the early 90s, like things were changing a bit, but it was kind of like, you'll be lucky to get a job if you get your leaving cert. There wasn't a whole lot going on, so for me the weekends were like a bit of an escape, because there wasn't a whole lot expected of you anyway. It was kind of, for me, my brother had emigrated at the time, so that was the only thing that was going to be planned for me. That was either going to go to America to follow him to America or somewhere else. Yeah, you know, you went to
I suppose late 80s, 86 or 87, I think. I went to London. Now, I didn't have to go to London, but it was bleak back then. Yeah. It was a great city in mid 80s. Like there was literally there was always a dance scene in Dublin. Yeah. There was always nightclubs to go to. You just had to look for them. I remember going to the apartment before I went to London, and that was a full on just straight dance club.
That was in Fleet Street.
Yeah, no slow sets. That's the big difference in my opinion. You know, it was just there to dance. So, and there was a hip hop scene, Now, we weren't too aware of it back then, but anyway, I went to London just to experience a bit of life. I had a job in Coolock. Actually, it wasn't a great job, but they were grim days in Dublin back then, you know. So it was a case of, let's get out here for a few years, you know, as opposed to doing FOSS or ankle courses and just get a bit of life experience over there, you know. So, and that's what we did, and it was in my back of my mind, it was to see a few clubs. Definitely, I remember I'm going to go leave the lads in the pub and venture into town and go to see what London nightlife is like. Yeah, the lads I went over, Christy and Brian, they liked music as well. But you know, three of us went over, and within a few months there must have been about 30 people over there, all living in southeast London. Yeah, not paying any rent. We were deeply involved into the squat culture. Right, yeah, so we had nowhere to stay. We went over there, you know. We arrived and we ended up sleeping on a floor that night, and then we knew a girl that was in Kilburn. That's where all the paddies went. Yeah. And then we went down to southeast London to Elephant and Castle, and there was a girl there called Maeve who we knew back from Dublin, and she put us on the floor for a couple of weeks until we got our own squat, and then we lived there happily for about 2 or 3 years. Deadly.
And what were you working at over there?
I initially started on the sites. It was easy to get involved, get jobs on the sites over there. It was tough work, but it was good crack, and you were young, and me and Derek Sneed and Christy Murphy, and we were there, and we would work hard and play hard, you know. But we had no problem getting jobs. It was just a case of ringing a phone number up, with Vanny's agent or something, and they would send you to a site on the Monday morning. You would do a recce on the Sunday, well, if you're new like me, and find out where it was, get on the bus. Greenwich was the first place I worked in, and takes a half an hour, so got there half an hour early that day, the Monday morning. It was like they'd send 6 people for 3 jobs. Yes. So I was told to make sure you're there first. And that's how we got our field bob to enjoy ourselves, you know. So that's what I initially did. Then I said to myself, even though it was great crack, and you did meet people from England and all over the world, but I said I want to get off the sites for a bit, and got a job in the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is sort of 2 ends of the scale.
Yeah, man, that's a building site of leading the Royal Shakespeare Company. You say that was some experience.
It was.
And how did that come about?
How did that come about? When you're on the site, you get to talk to a lot of people. You know, a lot of people is very transient, and I think there was a guy there who was going to a show that night, and he came back and he was telling me about it, and I said, and I was sort of, that sounds class, you know, like it sounds like a nice place. So I went down to have a look at it myself, and there wasn't any advertising. They didn't advertise for a job, but I just seen some people selling programs or something like that, or ice creams or something, and I said, what's it like working here? And he said, and I think they might have said, there's the guy over there that, you know, looks after Ferdinand and Ferdinand. So I went over to a fella called Julian, and he said come in for an interview next Monday, and I did. So worked there for a year or 2, which was eye opening, you know. Yeah.
And that was 1980.
That could have been about 89 or 88 or something like that, you know. When I moved to London, I went to some great clubs. Went to the WAG Club. There's another one called the Mud Club. There was Dingwalls in Camden. But we used to like getting out of London for the summer, so we go down to Greece for a few months, and you know, see other parts of the world, you know, and like France, and so missed the 88 thing, which was the big year, was the start of the whole thing. Now it was great coming back. It just started, so it was 88 was the first year that it happened in the UK, the mad stuff, you know what I mean. But 89 was as good. But I came back on the tails of 88 and club the Acid House thing, and the whole thing had gone a bit mad, like smiley t-shirts. So I was in Greece that year, came back in August, and it was all over the place, you know what I mean. People had started to dress differently. It was all from April where they were going around like dressed quite neatly.
Yeah, yeah.
And then after the summer, it was just all baggies and
Flares
acid t-shirts
yeah.
and all that, and a completely hippie vibe to it, you know what I mean? And all the clubs had changed then. It was all like the music had changed. It was like, you know, the 303 had come into it, and yeah, it was. And then the guys I was working with in the Royal Shakespeare Company, Fran from Belfast and a few girls from dotted around, you know, Somerset, and there was a guy from Birmingham. We used to go out to Heaven during the week. It was a great club. And we used to, that was our main club, and there was another place called Prohibition, I think it was called. But there was a couple of us that were hardcore that wanted to experience more. And we'd get on the whole M25 thing at the weekends. We'd be making phone calls on a Saturday, and we'd be ending up, we hadn't got a car, and we'd be getting lifts off people to farms, and we'd be driving around half the night. So I experienced all that, that you'd get a phone number on the floor, and you'd phone that Saturday, so after work at 10 o'clock we'd be on the phone and I said, where's the meet up and all that. That was great to experience, you know. It was fantastic. Now, and the people they'd pick you up, they'd seen two people, we'd make our way to the petrol station, and you'd have no problem getting lifts of strangers, and you'd rave the whole night away, you know. So class.
Whatever. And then the whole, so you experienced that, and then you were kind of having a bit of crack over there. When did you decide to come home, or what made you want to come home?
There's a couple of reasons actually, because I was having a really good time over there. One was there for 3 years. A lot of the lads that I had gone over with had gone back, and I was left over there on my own. So it was only 3 or 4 years we were there for, and I didn't mind being left on my own, you know. Because I'd made friends over there with the people in the RSC, hanging out with them, you know.
Yeah.
So the fact that they'd gone back didn't really matter. I was conscious of the fact I didn't want to stay there for the rest of my life either.
Yeah.
But I think I met a girl back in Dublin when I was home at Christmas. Plus, I had the idea, because I was well immersed in the whole club rave thing over there, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I sort of knew, even though it was happening back in Dublin, it wasn't really happening at that stage, but I knew there would have been some gaps.
Yeah.
And I knew I didn't know. I took a gamble that we used to buy the magazines, you know, Mix Mag and DJ Magazine and whatever magazines were out at the time, and I used to cut out the top 10s of all the DJs and collect them. So I had a big list of their top 10s. I know some of the tunes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I saved up about 500 sterling, which is probably about 1,000 at the moment,
right.
And went into a record shop in Islington. Yeah. And handed them the lists and said, how many of them have you got? His eyes just lit up. Started pulling records left, right and centre and giving me stuff that wasn't even on the list, and I had a pile of records like this. Yeah. And I got them into 2 big boxes, and convinced myself I was going to be a DJ, and got a fly home about 2 weeks later, and that was early 90, I'd say. Yeah, so that was the plan.
And as I had an MMA fighter who's a DJ in the Cock and Bull in Coola, Paul Redmond, and I was explaining to him, and I forget this stuff, like distinctive sounds. Now we've access to everything, but really there's not much choice, you know what I mean? We have access, but like if you hear something, you can literally, by the time you've got to your car over there, you have it downloaded. Where there was a bit more rooting about that day, and a bit more kind of, your man has these records and these white labels, and instead of like everyone having the white label, it was like that. Your sound was very distinctive with regard to the rest, and it was this like, you probably weren't aware of it, this folklore built up around our sound, like, because nobody went fucking anywhere then, and if they went, they didn't come back. So it's like, he was in the UK. You know what I mean? He was in the UK. That's your man that handed me that mixtape, you know what I mean? Right. I remember him going, and they were from, the bloke that handed me that, they were from kind of the Stillog and Leopardstown area. Right. And they went into sides every week. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like, that's Liam Dollard. And this whole kind of fairy tale, whether it was true or not, was getting told about you.
Right.
And that's what, when people went into Sides, or when I went into Sides and I heard them tracks, I was like, what the fuck? It was very different compared to what I was hearing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Sides was good back at that time. It was hopping.
Yeah, it was hopping, but it's funny you should say guys from Stillorgan, and I of course there was guys from Stillorgan, but initially when the whole thing kicked off, it was quite working class, you know. It was dominated by Sheriff Street, Ballyfermot, Coolock, in those days, Ballybrack, and then and people from inner city Dublin, and then a sprinkling of everyone else, you know what I mean, of the guys out in the south side, everywhere. There was a little sprinkle of everyone else, but initially it was one type of. It was dominated by working class people, and it was very raw. And that's what gave it the absolute fucking energy. You know what I mean? It's like Irish crowds, even to this day, have a name for being the best crowds in the world. Any band would be able to tell you that, and you can see it yourself. You know, when you go to any concert, like it is different here than even in England. There's more atmosphere, and it was the same with the clubs back in the day, back in the early 90s. So you can with added the rawness of the inner city, and it was electric. The atmosphere was electric, you know.
And it was a lot of people saving up to go out for their weekend or whatever they were doing, and there wasn't a whole lot of money about. So, like, in times of depression, you were talking about, even with the ska bands, the early beat bands, when even the past COVID, people taking up sea swimming or whatever, it's like, it's shit, but we're doing this. You know what I mean? We're looking for a way out.
I think in 1999, with the football going on with what they were doing with the Irish football team, there was a sense of optimism, and it did start turning around then. And I noticed in 1990 when I started giving out flyers for the guys in Sides, when I started, like, was one of my first jobs after the cloakroom. But you'd walk from Dame Street up to Parliament Street, and that was nearly the edge of town then, Parliament Street. You were going down this where the front lounge is, and there was the one down at the corner, where it's called the Turk's Head now. It's called something else then. It was a gay bar back then. That was like the end of the city, and that was a dark street. So that was. You know, I'd say early 90s, early 1990 when I was doing that work. By the next year, or the end of that year, things were looking. There was a change. You know, Dublin was changing very slowly, but that was it. And the catalyst was, not saying it was the rave or Sides. It was the football. You know, and the female presidents and all that sort of stuff. You know, but even though you could feel the whole country, there was a lift in it, you know, after what was it, 88 was Ireland beat England, Europe, in Germany. I went to that
Stuttgart,
and then 90 was Italy, and there used to be shouts of Scalacci on the dance floor inside when there was a break and a good tune, you know. So it was an incredible time to be DJing. I got into it because Mick Walsh and a couple of others, Warren Kiernan, they were already starting to DJ, and I sort of skipped in front of them. They got in eventually, but they were one of the first couple of DJs that were around at the scene back then as well. Mick was selling records, Warren Kiernan and them. They had a little band, but you had a fairly it was a great city because you also had little scenes like hip hop and rap going off, you know, and the mix and DJ Mech and all those guys, and you had all sorts of like rockabillys and punk still going. There was a great scene for whatever you're into. Dublin was always like a small London, in my opinion, you know. So
and then for me as a spectator, you were the DJ, so you would have seen it better. But me as a spectator, you were saying it was working class. But then, like say the Ormond Multimedia Centre, places like that, it had your working class. You spoke about a mix. You had your gays. You had your cure heads. You had skins. You had a mix of kind of everyone just for a night out. I found that a mix and match then, like it didn't really matter what crowd you were attached to. You could dip in and dip out.
Of course, yeah. I think a lot of even some of the old mods got involved in it. You know, a lot of people dipped their toe into it. But I think what happened then a year later, it spread out.
Yeah.
And a lot of everyone got into it.
Yeah.
Dublin was a very, in my opinion, and a lot of people would agree with this, a very rock city.
Yeah.
So I was 24, 25 at the time, starting to DJ. Most of the punters were about 17 or 18.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is people my age seeing this dance music come over to or start taking hold, and they didn't want any part of it back in the day. They said, no, that's a phase, that won't last, that'll be here for a year. You know what I mean? We're sticking to the guitars, you know. And there was a bit of snobbiness about it for people my peers. So the people I started hanging around with then through the dance scene for the next 10 years were all about 5 years, at least 5 years younger than me, you know what I mean? So there was a few other people my age, but most of them were like, if you were 20, that was old. You know what I mean? Like, whereas in London or Manchester or any other city over there, people that got into it were even older than me. So there was, they'd be returning soon. You know what I mean? So there was all ages got into it, or even in Spain. Whereas in Ireland, they started off with me, with like even Mick Walsh and all those guys. They were a good few years younger than me. So I was 25, so Mick would have been about 22, and Billy was 20, and Johnny was probably 19 or something like that, you know. So I was quite elderly at 25, you know what I mean? So my peers. Now, funny enough, fast forward to the end of the 90s, 98, everyone was into it. Even my peers, like the lads that were in the band Sack or Lord John White was it called, even they started getting into it then, you know what I mean? There were obviously some, you know, anomalies. There were when the kitchen happened. My peers got into it as well. The Sneaky Dogs and Derek Sneed and Gary and all them, they started going. It sort of took the kitchen to kick off. They were in. My peers would have gone to Re-Raw, Folk Off, all those sort of places. You know what I mean? And sort of left sides to me and the gang.
Like even like if you start from North Side, you had the Asylum, then you had the Multimedia Centre, then you Temple of Sound. This is at once when it kind of later on in the 90s. Then you had Use It.
Well, that wasn't really later on the 90s. It all happened really quickly because
95.
90 and 91 sides. But I think then the Temple of Sound opened fairly quickly. So I think by 92 the Temple of Sound had opened.
Right.
So that was fairly quick. And once the Temple of Sound opened and the Ormond Multimedia, it started to spread out. So there was a lot more people involved getting into it. It was getting bigger and bigger. And then the next thing, the pod opened, and then it got huge. Then it was the festivals were nearly starting after that. And then you had the Olympic Ballroom. And funny enough, I think it was even younger up there.
That was young.
No, I don't think they had a bar there. So
no, that was young.
So I'm not sure what the average age there was. The atmosphere there was absolutely manic. It was electric as well, you know. I was up there a few times, and there's some video footage that captures it quite good.
No, it was,
mental, and that was bigger. There's balconies. Size was quite a tight little dark club, you know. So no, and it kind of fragmented out all over the place. Then the Temple Theatre came later on. That was late 90s. Now that was, I think, around 97, 98, that sort of time, you know.
And really, for something that was only going to be a fad that was really raw, like it took over every club really in Dublin. There was a few that held out, but there wasn't many that didn't.
Dance music sort of got into mainstream then, didn't it? The Harp was another one that was fairly early with the house music, you know, and Tin Pan Alleys.
Yes, I remember that place. I forgot all about that place. And
then there was a place called Club Soul and Groucho's that were smaller little clubs as well. They're excellent places. Loads of places to go to, and you could even go to Rera. It was a good time to be out clubbing in Dublin. You had big choices, you know.
And I'm mentioning him again, Paul Redmond reminded me, I forgot all about it. Loads of my mates were like bedroom DJs. They'd like Aristons, and some of them had decent decks, you know what I mean? But into like something I just completely forgot about, a Saturday going into Billy, asking them for records, and you'd see a few people shuffling in and out and buying records, and he'd hand you three, listening to them, and buying one and handing two back, and it was a great old time.
It was great to go into the Abbey Mall and root through the records before he moved over to the more permanent structure. But the Abbey Mall was great. You get your coffee, and there was Billy's shop, and then there was Power across, and you'd sit in the middle, and you could hear both sets of speakers going and have a coffee and meet everyone. And it was, and he'd get all the tunes in, and he'd hold you a bag, and he'd give you a bag, and you'd listen to it, and he was part of it as well, you know. So and then a few other record shops opened. Tag and Mark Dixon had a shop, Future Groove, and it wasn't easy to make money out of selling records, though. You had to get them in quick, and there wasn't a huge markup. I think Sides opened a record shop for a while, and the owner didn't realise how much profit was coming in from each record, you know.
Yeah. And then you left Sides, and what did you do then when you left Sides then? What year did you leave Sides?
Yeah, I worked in Sides for about 3 years, which sort of 90 to 93, early 93 I think it was, and then a few gigs in the Armagh Multimedia, but I started getting gigs in Waterford and places like that, so I went on a bit of a tour around Ireland for a couple of years, which was fun, you know.
Yeah.
And also there was gigs in Dublin as well, I had a couple of Irish Times charts calendars, and of a couple of years, and I had all the dates where I was being booked, you know, for the years after Sides, and had for 2 years I was really busy, you know, getting on the circuit, clubs in Limerick and Waterford and Galway. It was quite fun, you know, to get around, but I was also holding down a job,
right?
You know, so I always wanted to work as well. I didn't want to. I think for the initial 2 years, I was DJing and partying, and that was my profession, you know. And then I said, I have to cop onto myself here. So I was doing a gig one night for a band. They were based out in Malahide, actually not far from here, and a guy called Eric. And I knew that his dad had a printer, so he told me at the session afterwards, and I said, "Listen, I need to get back into the work.
Right?
Can you have a word?" And he, in fairness, he came through. He said, "I'll do what I can." And I got a steady job in printers out in Coolock, and I was able to buy an apartment with that.
Okay.
And it was it was sort of like a step back into normality. You know? So,
I'd imagine. Being a DJ and being busy like that, you can get sucked into that, just partying and DJing, and kind of you're back into Wednesday again, and then Thursday night swings around and you're back on the roundabout again, you know.
Yeah, you could go out on a Friday and come back in on a Tuesday back then, you know, which is, you know, it's okay when you're a young fella, but you don't want to be doing too many years of that, you know. And it was great to do. Sure, even the late 90s, I was still DJing in the late 90s quite heavily. I remember I got a job in where I'm working now. I started in BOC Gases just after the Monday after Princess Diana died. Okay, so that's 97, I think. And I remember still being heavily on the DJ circuit around Ireland and playing football as well.
Right.
So I'd be on a late shift an early shift on the Friday, and I'd go and do a gig in Waterford, say. I'd have my records with me in the car, and then on the Saturday I'd wake up and do a gig maybe in Galway, and then I'd come back, and then I'll tell a lie. So the gigs went something like this: they'd start in somewhere like Limerick on a Friday night, come back, and I think I was doing the Temple Theatre, had a residency there on the Saturday night, and I'd drive in, and then I was up playing football on the Sunday morning, and the first time I could relax for the whole weekend was having a pint after the game. If we'd won or not, you know. And I remember saying, "Oh my God, jeez, I'm exhausted." You know, on the point, and then do it all over again. That lasted for a few years, you know. Not a few years, about a year or two.
Yeah.
And then it started to taper off then in the 2000s, you know.
Yeah. And I suppose DJing at the time, I liked, my particular favourite was Moon Boom. I loved that. I liked that track. What were your favourites? How were your collection? Or what were your favourites that other guys are playing?
I don't. There's loads of the IBO and Eterna. There's loads, you know. There's stuff from you could still play now, and they sound really good. You know, that's a whole different subject. The names of the tunes.
I put up on the story today that I had you today. You know what I mean? And the uncle that was driving me over goes, "That's a good tune. That's still timeless, isn't it?"
Which one?
Nikolai. I put up Nikolai.
Yeah.
And he goes, I was like, I still call that as like, that's Liam Dollar's tune. He goes, "I know, I used to hear blah blah blah." I was like, "No, that's Liam Dollar's tune, man." Now, he wouldn't have been born in 1990. He wouldn't have been born in 1992. So I'm like me out in the passenger seat saying, "Shut the fuck up."
How long did you go on the club scene?
I took up sport about 96. So
right.
I was gone 96. So it would have been.
That's not team sport. That's jiu-jitsu.
Cycling. No, I used to do a lot of cycling.
Right.
Actually, a fella from Larkin. Do you know a fella called Liam Keenan?
No.
Come across Liam from up a lot.
Probably younger.
A mate of me dad's.
Okay.
I think he died a few years ago.
Oh, no.
Their cancer. But I started kind of going out with them and kind of moved because, you know, you're only young for a bit and you're supposed to do that, but then you kind of drift in and out of it quick, you know.
Yeah.
And I found the 90s, I like I was saying to you about sea swimming, I found it was quite new and raw, and then when it spread everywhere and the kitchen had a particular crowd and the Temple of Sound had a particular crowd, and I didn't go to sides anymore and I'd dip in and out of the asylum, it just, for me, it wasn't new anymore. That's just the way I felt. It wasn't, even though people probably said that were involved in it since the 80s and the 90s.
Listen, in the year 80, in 89, they were already saying it's not the same as it was last year. You know,
do you know what I mean?
So that's always that was always the way. But you know,
that's just my interpretation. It's like, you know, I think I went into the Temple Theatre one night. I just went in. I probably spent an hour in there. I remember going, I think I'm the oldest fucker in this place.
Yeah, did you think I felt?
So I was with me wife now. I was like, oh, now.
Did you meet your wife in the clubs?
No, I met her in the gym actually. I met her in Total Fitness in Coolock.
Oh, really?
That's where I met her, yeah, in the gym.
But, and what were you doing in there? Just
training.
Yeah.
She was working. I was just training, and that's how I met her, you know.
And what do you do these days? What's your sport?
Jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Jiu-jitsu. That's what I do now. Strangling people for fun.
That's
like
wrestling, is it?
It's like wrestling, but just with submissions.
The little one wants to be a ninja. Can you help her out?
Yeah, jiu-jitsu. You're up in Lucan, so
yeah.
There's a few places up there. There's a few places in and around up there, you know.
I have her down with the GAA at the moment, so but she's mad about going around pretending she's a ninja.
Oh, whopper.
And she has the sticks and everything, so she's a little Tomer. She's so
whopper. And you're still playing any gigs now? Or?
Well, Sadie's 5, so I made a conscious decision not
Okay.
to be out late for the last 5 years. I didn't want to. Yeah, well, don't get me wrong. I'm not asked. I don't get asked to do too many. You know, but when I do, I go, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, and I'm conscious that I'm conscious of the fact that, you know, I'm not saying that I'll never DJ again, but the fact that you're turning down gigs and you're not out there putting yourself, there's a chance that and that's fine. I've done plenty of gigs, you know what I mean? And, you know, I still love the music. I still play the music. I still dance around. I actually found that I have some sort of like issues. I'll get a little bit old, but I think not dancing is not good for your body. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm actually
yeah.
starting to dance around the place now on my own, listening to tunes, you know. So it's,
You need to move.
because I noticed I got some physio work to do there a few months ago, and it's like, you know, it's like lower back pain sitting on your arse all day and work, you know, and the moves that they're giving you to do every day is like moves that you'd be dancing, you would be using to dance, the muscles that would you use to dance.
Yeah.
And I've got and if you stop dancing I did a lot of dancing. I got into the whole thing because I love dancing.
Yeah.
Back before I even went to London. That's where my love for music came from, whether it was reggae or Sister Sledge or whoever, Lionel Rich, what's his name?
Lionel Richie,
yeah. I love dancing, still do. And when you get older and you stop going to clubs and stop dancing, you know, your body doesn't like it.
No. A fella told me a few years ago, you know, sitting down, it's like, and as you get a slight bit older, not that your body tries to trap you. So if you just sit down all the day, your body will go, okay, this is all you want to do. I'm going to leave you in that position. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like, use it or lose it.
That's exactly it.
You know?
That's exactly it. So cycling, do everything, play golf, and I've always been fairly, like I stopped playing soccer when I was 44. Right. And I've actually, I don't know, my standing foot, I kicked with my left, right? So when I put my foot down, you mean your right foot, and kick with my left, part of my muscles down there, I walk differently with my right foot, so it displays out more. It's a bit that, and I think it's because I overdid the football. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I loved every moment of it, you know what I mean? But so I'm gonna have to. You have to keep active, you know. Walking, like I've walking the last few months for me now is sort of like, because of that issue, is actually starting to give me a bit of pain, even with orthotics and all that. So I'm fairly conscious of what you were just talking about there. If you don't use it, you lose 100%. It. Yeah.
And I've even found, like, I'm not training as much in this lockdown as I was before, and I'm just getting these mad pains. It's like my body's saying, what's fucking going on, man? You know what I mean? My body's like saying, why aren't you moving? Like,
you've had to stop certain sports.
Because, well, with gyms being closed, you can't do jiu-jitsu or wrestling, so I'm doing some in the house, but I'm just getting smashed up by my young fella. So I'm just getting smashed up, so I'm not smashing anyone else up. So my movements with him are like purely defensive, trying to save myself. So I'm not doing other stuff.
And as you say, the swimming, you can only get in for 5 minutes, so that's not going to.
No, that's to make you feel better. But
that's just an instant. I've tried it when you were saying we're going for a swim today. I was having a shower, and I said I'll do the cold water trick, you know, where you sort of expose yourself. You're in the shower and then you expose yourself to the full on cold. Yeah. Get a blast, and it gives you a reset. But that's what happens out there in the sea, isn't it? Reset.
You get it's that fight or flight. So it's like walking into sides back in the day, smell of poppers everywhere. I'm gonna be fucking killed in here. At the same time, someone's gonna bleed and shoot me, and it's that fight or flight. So that kind of leads to it. You know what I mean?
And did you find when you were walking into sides, that was 90, 93, was that?
92.
Was there a bit of it threatening?
I was so young. Right. I was younger. So for me, no matter where you went, I was going up to the door expecting, you're a teenager, you're expecting automatically a bouncer to go, sorry, not tonight, make a show you in front of all your mates.
In you go,
you're like, yes!
At what age are you? 15, 16?
I was about 16, yeah.
Right, yeah, that's okay. You know.
So you're
above average age back then.
You're expecting that stuff anyway, so
yeah.
Like you were saying about that grittiness, I found that with the asylum as well. They just carried that type of grittiness down clubs. So you were in fight or flight mode, but you didn't realise it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it was there
was some brilliant times, like the year 1991 when all the Italian music anthems were out, like SLD and Asha JJ Tribute. That was like Dublin Summer of Love. It was a nice summer, and it was like the club was bouncing, and it was, you know, it was absolutely euphoric. I'll never forget it, you know. So, but fast forward a couple of years, there was the darker side of things.
Yeah.
A little bit crept in.
Yeah.
more than a little bit, but
Yeah.
but it happened everywhere. It happened in Manchester, it happened in Glasgow, it happened in, so I presume down in London as well. But you see, at the time when I got involved, there was Cork was and Belfast were both established cities for clubbing. You had emigrated and Homer up in Belfast, and then you had Greg and Shane down in Cork.
Yeah.
They were ahead of Dublin by about six months, I'd say. You know, it was fairly fresh up there as well. So there was buses going from Dublin up to Belfast, and there was buses going from Dublin to Cork, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And it was great. So down south, you had the more sort of deep house soul sort of lyrics, like sort of mellow, 118, 120 beats per minute. Fantastic. Like, and the crowd in Cork were incredible as well.
Yeah.
And then up north in Belfast was more of a bangier sound, a tougher sound, you know, like very, and also with some great a mix of other stuff as well, eclectic stuff. So I think Dublin actually managed to take off both.
Yeah.
Was influenced by both scenes. Like, there was a lot of house music in Dublin as well. There was a lot of strictly rhythm records played and high bias, which is nice house music, you know. There was other stuff as well, like there was techno. So we were sort of influenced by both, what was going on both. And then I think when the Temple of Sound opened, it was quite a techno sort of scene.
Yeah.
Billy Nasty used
Billy
to play.
Nasty, Felix the House Cat used to come in, and David Holmes was down.
Oh, he was a legend. Yeah.
Andrew Weatherall.
Yeah, Andrew Weatherall played in one of the best clubs in Dublin that I was ever at. A place called the B Club, which was in Tim Panelli's. Johnny ran it, in Patter, and that was me going out as a punter. But Weatherall played in the B Club, and I think it might have been Phil Perry. There was a series of about 5 of them.
Yeah.
They were just incredible.
Savers of Paradise.
They were just incredible nights out. You know what I mean? As a you know, for someone paying in.
Yeah.
You know, that was amazing.
Right, Liam, we're going to end it at that.
That it?
That's it. All over bar the shouting.
Had you got a timer on that?
I have here one now. We have done in an hour. Yeah, I can't go too far over, otherwise it fucking shits itself. So,
thanks a million.
Liam, nice one. I'm going to shut this off and
Hopefully you got it.
like, subscribe, all the usual, and give Liam a follow. Please like, subscribe, all that type of jazz. Yep. Now.